Good day, everyone. I am Juvie Gairama Arpon. I am presenting my thesis entitled A Case Study on the Internal Control Practices of Income Generating Projects of Naval State University. Poverty hinders a person's economic, social, and political rights. In the daily struggle of providing for his family, man's other needs and rights tend to be overlooked. This normally occurs in third world countries where support from the government to its constituents are mostly insufficient for his basic rights, such as but not limited to food, security, health, and education. One of the solutions conceived by poor nations to augment the lack of finances in household, organizations, and university was the engagement in income generating projects or activities. Income generating activities can also be carried out by an organization to raise revenue to enhance a project or enhance school finances. In the Philippines, the concept of IGP was conceived in 2007. Most of these IGPs used to be production and special projects have been converted into full-fledged IGPs after being approved by the University Board of Management. Internal control on IGP is one of the basic tools of management to check and to achieve the mandate on efficiency, economy, and effectiveness in its operation, as well as to detect and minimize the occurrence of fraud, errors, and wastage in using the government funds. This study aims to assess the internal control practices applied to the income-generating projects of Naval State University using the Commission of Sponsoring Organizations of the Threadway Commission or COSO Internal Control Integrated Framework in order to propose policies for improved internal control processes. This study specifically aims to know the profile in terms of the nature of the projects, years of existence, number and classification of personnel, variable costs, fixed costs, salaries and wages scheme, net income or net loss contribution margin of the university, and fixed cost volume profit analysis. Also, the internal control practices applied to control environment, risk assessment, control activities, information and communication, and monitoring activities, as well as the gaps experienced by the IGPs in their internal control practices and proposed policies for internal control practices. This research was anchored on the internal control framework formulated by COSO. COSO integrated framework consists of five components, namely risk assessment, control environment, control activities, information and communication, and monitoring. The conceptual framework is represented the basis in structuring the study and in answering the research questions. First is the profile of the IGP in terms of nature of the projects, years of existence, number and classification of personnel, variable costs, fixed cost, salary and wages scheme, net income or net loss contribution margin, and cost volume profit analysis. Then the internal control practices of each IGP were evaluated based on the COSO components: the control environment, risk assessment, control activities, information and communication, and monitoring. The evaluation process was done using the survey questionnaires, interviews, content analysis, and observations. Gaps or weaknesses in the internal control system were then identified and were the basis for the proposed policies to improve the internal control processes. Now, this study used qualitative research, a case study interview questionnaires, and actual observation. The respondents are the 8 project managers of the 8 IGPs of the Naval State University. The study used 5-point Likert scale. Weighted mean was applied to the Likert scale to interpret the results on internal control. As to the findings on canteen project, the project has been in the university for the last 13 years, with 1 project manager and 5 personnel. The average variable cost is 296,000. The average fixed cost is 592,000. Average net income of 1,481,000, and average cost volume profit of 678,000. Project managers strongly agreed to all 17 principles of COSO integrated framework, namely control environment, risk assessment, control activities, information and communication, and monitoring activities. For the reproduction and printing, it has been in the university for the last 15 years with 1 project manager and 5 personnels, with an average variable cost of 386,000, average fixed cost of 825,000, average net income of 2,986,000, and average cost volume profit of 1,412,000. Project Director strongly agreed to all 17 principles of cost integrated framework, namely the control environment, risk assessment, control activities, information and communication, and monitoring activities. For the hostel, it has been in the university for the last 16 years with 1 project manager and 5 personnel, with an average variable cost of 178,000, average fixed cost of 323,000, average net income of 790,000, and average cost volume profit of 361,000. Project directors strongly agreed to the principles of cost control activities and information and communication, while in agreement to control environment, risk assessment, and monitoring activities. For the rental project, it has been in the university for the last 16 years with 1 project manager and 5 personnel, average variable cost of 330,000, average fixed cost of 670,000, average net income of 1,681,000, and average cost volume profit of 766,000. Project managers strongly agreed to all principles of risk assessment, control activities, information and communication, and monitoring activities, while in agreement to control environment principles. For the Carmen's project, it has been in the university for 14 years with 1 project manager and 6 personnel, with an average variable cost of 184,000, average fixed cost of 525,000, average net income of 1,390,000, and average cost volume profit of 575,000. Cost Project director strongly agreed to all principles under 5 components of COSO integrated framework. Rice production has been in the university for the past 47 years, with 1 project manager and 6 workers. Average variable cost of 280,000, average fixed cost of 252,000, average net income of 287,000, and average cost volume profit of 425,000. Project managers agreed to principles under control environment, risk assessment, control activities, and information and communication. However, the respondents were undecided to the principles under monitoring activities. Poultry and livestock production has been in existence for the past 44 years, with 1 project managers and one project manager and 5 worker with an average variable cost of 175,000, average fixed cost of 46,000, an average net income of 13,000, and average cost volume profit of 94,000. The project directors are in agreement to all principles except that the respondents were undecided to the principles under monitoring activities. For the vegetables and fruit production, it has been in the university for 44 years with one project manager and 5 workers, with an average variable cost of 65,000, an average fixed cost of 59,000, an average net loss of negative 7,000, average cost volume profit of 139,000. Project directors are in agreement to all principles except that the respondents or the project manager were undecided to the principles under the monitoring activities. For the gaps being experienced in the IGPs, the IGP project manager has multiple roles within the university due to lack of non-teaching staff. The IGP has no internal audit department that could assist in the implementation of internal control as there is no job item available for its head and staff. The IGP has no information system and no allocation for such system has been allowed for its acquisition. The IGP has no policy on whistleblowing. However, they can voice out their complaints, opinions, views, and the like during the quarterly meeting attended by the university president. And COA had findings on the procurement allocation for the catering services. It is also noted that most IGP operations were mainly buy and sell business. They did not include the students in their operations. Based on the findings of the study, it can be concluded that the IGPs of the Naval State University applied the principles associated with the 5 components of COSO internal control integrated framework, namely control environment, risk assessment, control activities, information and communication, and monitoring activities. It was noted, however, that despite the presence of these controls, there were gaps identified which needed to be addressed to improve its internal control implementation, particularly the multiple roles handled by the IGP as well as the absence of internal audit department. The researchers recommend to follow the proposed internal control policies. The university should address the gaps, lessen the functions assigned to the IGP managers, and the university should designate personnel capable to handle internal audit and to conduct future research. That ends my presentation. Thank you everyone and stay safe.